Welcome back to the Dog Classroom. I'm Amelia.
I'm Anne-Marie.
And today we are going to talk about dog sociability. So why don't we start off
I was going to say maybe we'll break that down a little more than
talking about what it means.
Yeah, exactly.
So we had this conversation when we were talking about it, and just to make it sort of clear as to what I mean by that, I'm talking about how one individual dog feels about interactions with other dogs, basically.
Right. So we're just going to talk about dog. We're not necessarily going to venture into the world of dog-human.
Yeah, and it's not the same, right? So for a lot of dogs, like there might be dogs who don't like people and they love dogs, or vice versa. But today we're just going to talk about dog interactions because in our line of work it comes up a lot, particularly because in some of our classes we do have off-leash playtime. Yeah,
especially group classes because, again, it's not controlled who signs up.
Yes.
Right? Like we don't sit there with the list and match. It's convenience, right? Who can come at that time. And there's multiple ages-ish. And breeds, personalities,
sizes, all different things.
Yep.
And every dog has a different set of genetics and different experiences and all kinds of things that go into building that sociability and how they're going to feel about that.
Yeah.
The other thing we'll talk about is how it changes over time.
Yes, which I think is important.
Which is normal.
Yeah, which is normal. So ideally going, puppy, maybe we should kick in adolescence because we talked about puppy, adult. So puppy, adolescence, adult, and senior. And just sort of, I think Amelia, when we were discussing this before taping, is that using our dog situations, and I had mentioned that in a newspaper article, I think people relate quite well when we use examples from our own experiences. So,
well, I think having examples of our own dogs, we can sort of go into some of the nuances of like those individual dogs, right? So my view is I think of dog sociability as the spectrum. So there's on one end of the spectrum, there's completely dog social, loves every dog that they see, wants to interact with them, wants to play with them. Typically that's your puppies. Some puppies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then way on the other end of their spectrum, there are dogs who are what we would call dog aggressive or dog reactive, who they just don't want to spend time with other dogs. Maybe there's one or two dogs in their circle, but they would prefer not to interact with other dogs. Most adult dogs are somewhere in the middle. They're not at either end of those spectrums.
Yeah.
So what I think the issue is that society expects the dog social end of the spectrum to be every dog.
Right, and I think a lot of time it's put on the breed.
It is put on the breed, and it's put on the owner, right? Like we talk about the importance of socialization, which can help, but ultimately the DNA that your dog has, the genetics that they have, are going to play a part in that no matter what you do as far as socialization, as far as training. So when we get into the adult dog piece, we'll talk more about that. But talking about our own dogs for a moment, I would say Holly is probably my only dog ever that has been dog social from puppy through to senior.
Okay. Which may be rare.
Yeah, I think it is rare.
Yeah.
And even as a dog social dog, she wasn't overly like pulling toward dogs and like crazy about seeing them. But if she had the chance to interact with the dog, she loved that.
Right.
And so I think that's like more of a normal expectation for if your dog is social into adulthood.
Right.
The rest of our dogs are somewhere in the middle there.
In the middle, yeah.
So maybe we'll save Stark for last.
Okay.
And I'll talk about Nuggie.
Yeah.
So Nuggie is my 5-year-old Chihuahua, and she is, I would say, somewhere almost bang in the middle. She's not dog social. She doesn't like to play with dogs that she doesn't know. But she's not dog reactive. She doesn't bark at dogs. She doesn't, she's not upset about their existence. They can be around her.
But I think she fits the middle spectrum, which is where I am with most of the dogs, is once she gets to know them.
Yeah, so
build that
relationship.
Yes, in her circle. Yep.
Then she's happy. There is the rare occasion where she's happy to see a dog she doesn't know. So, I mean, I wouldn't say she's like overly dog social, but if she meets another small dog that she really likes to see, sometimes she'll offer them play.
Okay.
That's where I would put her. What about your dogs?
Yeah, I would say more in that, and we're going to go through this a little bit more, is most of them do better with 1 or 2 dogs at a time.
Yes.
I found that as far as interacting on leash, I would say Maui's the only one who's probably pretty interested in doing it. To me, Alfie is a lot more social off leash, so is B. Quite social
and so those are
off
things
leash.
that you take into account.
Yeah, you take into account. Frolic can be social. Again, a senior now, which we'll get into, and maybe I'll dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
With her, but the thing with Maui is he's never been the type of dog that likes to go to the training space and wrestle or be in with 5 or 6 other dogs. He just finds it too overwhelming and gets stressed about it. So
yeah, so he likes dogs, he wants to see them, but he's not necessarily in the dog right at the end of the dog social end of the spectrum, because there are situations that he would prefer.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
he's sort of moving this way and moving.
But if we go in the back 40 and Steph and Kels and all them bring the dogs, he's a hoot.
Yes.
Yeah, because we're walking and moving. He doesn't necessarily want to sit there and wrestle with how many dogs in the fenced-in yard or in the training space. But the fun thing is when I bring him down for a consult or 2 where he gets to meet 1 or 2 dogs at a time, the cool thing is he's offering play most of the time and trying to get them to play. So agreed, he's never been at either end. And I think, I don't want to say I've assumed that, but I did, when he was younger, have him in classes and realized very quickly that was not his thing.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the struggle, is when it changes throughout their life.
Yes.
And I know, like Tulip, for example, I would put her somewhere like a little more social than Nuggie, probably.
But that's only come about the last few years.
It's changed.
Right.
So
yes.
I think it's interesting how those things happen.
Yeah.
I would say same with Alfie.
Yes, agreed.
Alfie has become more social.
Yeah,
recently.
and he's goofy and dorky now, where before it just used to be stress.
Yeah.
But, in him being a reactive dog from a young age, that's taken a lot of work to get there.
Yeah, and so you can move, either way on that
we're
spectrum.
moving in the spectrum based on age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then we talk about Stark, who is at the other end of the spectrum from Holly, where Holly was dog social and Stark is dog reactive.
Yeah.
Stark is my senior dog. He's 12 and a half. He's a Shepherd Husky mix, and he has a very small circle of friends that he really likes, and he has introduced new dogs to that circle, and it takes time and it takes a process. Mm-hmm. But if we were to run into a dog on a trail, there would be a problem, right? So he's sort of in that, don't want to be your friend, don't sniff me, don't talk to me. He's not the kind of dog who wants to fight and wants to go out of his way to get somebody.
No.
But
he keeps to himself.
He's not social. He doesn't enjoy social interactions with dogs. Yeah. So, and that's fine. Yeah. That's maybe a little outside of the range of what's normal for.
But the thing is, he has so many other endearing qualities.
He's wonderful. But this is just the sociability thing, and he does. He has a little girlfriend. He has Frolic. He has dogs that he really enjoys. So, giving examples of our own dogs, I'm hoping that helps for people to see that our dogs are not by any means on this end, perfect dog social, love everybody.
Just because, because people will say to us, well, you're a dog trainer. We can't make our dog into something that they're not. It's embracing the personality and going from there. But I've had a few people tell me that, like Alfie being reactive, because I'm a trainer, I can't train it out. It's just not practical.
And it's his personality, and dogs are individual. And I think that's something all of us need to embrace, is that even if your dog started out as a dog social puppy, which I would say neither of mine did. Holly, I didn't know her as a puppy, and Stark and Nuggie, in puppy play school, I don't even think Stark was allowed to play. So
I honestly don't remember.
It was a long time ago, but my dogs have never started out that way, so I've never felt disappointed that they weren't that way later
I
on,
see
if
where
that
you're
makes
going with
sense.
that. Yeah.
Whereas I know a lot of people, they start out and their dog loves to play with other dogs and they're coming to socials and they're, going on group walks and they're doing all these fun things. And then as the dog matures into adolescence, they become more selective about who their friends are.
Right. And I think the important thing is realizing when you get a young dog, so let's talk about that first.
Okay, so puppies.
Let's talk about the puppies. Is when you get a young dog, that puppy coming in, that's not their, I don't want to say true personality. What's a better word?
It's not their adult personality.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, that's good.
Because just like us, right?
That's not their adult personality, that they still need to grow into that dog person.
Who they are.
Who they are. So I think a lot of people get blindsided by that. The puppies, like you said, super social, loves to come, or opposite, the puppy's super timid. How many puppies have we seen come in timid and 2-3 weeks later are in there like a dirty shirt having the best time ever?
Yes.
Right? So it's a learning curve, and the important is to be very, when we talk sociability with puppies, is interacting different types of dogs, ages, breeds, sizes, right?
Yeah.
Keeping that sociability up, but realizing the dog is maturing into the adult dog. And, I don't mean to be pessimistic for people, but I'm like, just wait till adolescence, because that's when the hormones and I feel the major changes are happening, not necessarily in puppyhood.
And you need to be more cautious with the interactions you let your dog have in adolescence, because if things are starting to change, the learned experiences are going to stick with them. So if they do have a bad experience, they're learning, they're developing their adult personality, and that might play a part in it. If they go, I went and I had a negative experience, maybe a little scrap with a dog or something, they might not want to see that dog the next time. And so you have to be careful with puppies. Yes, of course, we know that. But also with adolescent dogs, like, we can't just assume they're going to be fine with everything we throw at them forever.
Right. It's always entering, and it's us trying to encourage you just to enter different scenarios with just a little bit of like a note to self, instead of, last time 2-3 months ago my dog was perfectly fine, and now I'm going into it. There is so much change, mature brain development. I'm thinking of Julia while I'm talking about this, our adolescent little expert there. Brain development, everything in the 2.5 years of the first 2.5 years.
Yeah, there's so much going on.
And I'm not even saying 2 years anymore. I'm going 2.5, 3 years. Like, there's so much change and development in there. That's when they're figuring out who they are. So maybe we need to compare that. And again, we're not going to get in the adolescent thing, but when our kids are growing up and they enter adolescence, and I was doing this with Ben and Maya as far as growth, but the idea is males mature differently, or they take longer to mature.
Okay.
Yeah, emotionally, kids and teenagers. But kids and teenagers, it's more like, what do they say? Girls, there's more like 6 years, and boys are almost like 10. Okay. Believe it or not. And then we're talking about dogs, which is basically a third or half that.
And
that
also
all this
different
changing,
breeds
till their actually personality really comes through about who they are, confident wise, and that sort of thing. So it's really important to remember you have this beautiful little puppy. It's just absorbing everything you do with it and that, but it's still going to mentally and emotionally develop into that adolescence. So I don't want to say take it for granted. I want to be careful about that, but you really just have to be aware that isn't, I don't want to say who your puppy is. Yeah. That's partially who
That's a part of them.
Right. Who will develop into.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I think, like, when we talk about different breeds and stuff, like both of us being previous bully breed owners, we see a lot of, they love dogs. They were so happy. They were, having such a great time at the dog park. And then they turned 2. Like, when I think of, many, many years ago, maybe like 15 years ago now, when I used to take Pebbles to the dog park.
Yeah. You're dating yourself. That's pretty fun.
I know. But I would go to the dog park, and until she was 2, she had a great time. And then it started, she's fighting with other females. And it started with, there's too many dogs at the park. So she started fighting. And so there was different contexts. So maybe we can talk about, yes, it's going to change from puppy to adult to senior. And I know, like with Frolic, she has sort of changed not from puppy to adult, but maybe more from adult to senior.
Yeah. So, but let's do, so we got the puppy, we got the adolescence. We have those quirky changes in there. You know, sometimes they love some more dogs, you know, group environments.
Yes.
It also, honestly, let's just throw a little clincher in there. I think, you know what? I think we probably should have done 2 episodes on this, because I'm just looking at our time.
Well,
and I'm
maybe we'll do another one.
Yeah. So the thing is their development is also affected by our interactions that we give them as well, because we're like in winter right now. So some dogs don't see other dogs for 4 months. Well, that affects them. So we're talking about age and sociability, but we're also talking about environmental changes.
Yeah, so we will, like I know a lot of people, they'll do puppy play school beginning with basics, and then we don't see them until there's a problem.
Yeah.
Right? So because they just aren't aware that that's not the final version of their dog. And so they assume, right, that the dog will continue to be sociable, the dog will continue to, you know, feel the same way. So changing throughout even adulthood, not just from puppy to adolescence, then where Frolic, I would say, used to be more dog social, right? Because she was our consult dog for a long time. Like, she'd help us with behavior consults. And now as she's starting to get a bit older, her tolerance is less.
Yes.
So she's starting to change into being almost less social than she was as a puppy, whereas Elfie and Tulip, not that they're seniors at this point.
Well, they're getting there,
but they're almost getting like more frisky.
Yeah, they are. They're getting a little more sociable, which is interesting, which honestly, I never had that pegged for either one of them. But, you know, it's funny, you bring Tulip down to agility and she's flirting, apparently.
Yeah, she's her little boyfriend now.
Yeah, a little boyfriend, flirting. So, yeah, and I think with Frolic and watching her, and even in the household a little bit, there's not as much tolerance. And you know, as she gets older, we get a little more sore. And I think that's partially it, because, you know, she did have one younger dog jump on her, and that she did not like that. And I learned from it very quickly. So, you know, now if she's out and about a little bit, we're working at a distance unless she initiates it and we take it slow. But again, it's pivoting. Apparently is my word today, is being able to pivot on the sociability. She absolutely loves walking club and stuff like that. So she would almost rather coexist on leash and doing those type of things instead of off leash or in a play situation where she's worried about being bumped or jumped on.
Exactly. So I think it's really important to think about all those different situations. Plus, throughout their life, like, you know, genetics and everything coming into play, and maybe bodily changes and feeling sore and all that stuff. But also the situations we put them in, which you mentioned. So the kind of training that we do when they're puppies matters. The kind of training that we do when they're adolescents matters. The kind of situations we put them in. So if our dog has started showing us maybe that they don't like to go to dog socials, puppy socials, whatever, and we continue to bring them to them, that's maybe something that we are contributing to pushing them away from dog social. Same thing with the shy puppies. So if you come to class, you have a shy puppy, and you go, oh, you know, my puppy was scared, I'm never coming back. We actually do encourage those shy puppies to come back, because we put protections in place to make sure they have a good experience, and then they come out of their shell more. So they're going from, you know, less dog social to more dog social. So we can influence that just as the internal factors can influence that. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's I want to just build on that a titch. Sorry, just had a little bit of a thought, even with Frolic. So the thing I want to make sure too, though, is that I'm recognizing her needs, and then also not allowing her to, overcorrect or affect another dog's social skills. So the thing is, even though, like Amelia just said, we're putting them in situations ideally they're not comfortable in and they're having to react, well, that affects the other dogs that are actually there. Yeah. So the thing is looking at the whole dynamic. So remember, and what we're trying to say as far as sociability, let's break it down a little bit more. So Amelia's talking about the group classes. A lot of puppies can function and play in large groups, but maybe as they get older, those groups may be smaller. And that's ideally what I'm saying about Maui as well. 1 or 2 dogs he's usually good at, but he gets super overwhelmed even now with multiple dogs. Is that may change to eventually, say with Frolic, I would only say that she plays a lot with Maui, the odd time with Stark if he's poking at her, but the thing is she's just not interested in offering that play style with new dogs, right? As they get older. But when we talk about sociability, everybody gets stuck on the thing of the dog parks and the playing and the wrestling. So remember, sociability is, again, like I said, walking together on leash.
Yes.
Which walking together off leash. Remember, walking and moving is totally different than standing in the middle of a field and dogs wrestle, because then we talk about dogs play differently.
That's going to be an episode, play styles.
Play styles,
because that will depend on who your dog wants as their friend.
Yeah.
And so getting to know your individual dog, I think, is really important, as to, like, maybe you think they're dog reactive, but you're just putting them in situations they don't like.
Right.
Whereas
and then,
they might be somewhere in the middle.
In mentioning that, you have all the puppies and grouped together, and then the personalities build. And then your dog is saying, well, you know what, I really don't like to play that way anymore. And remember, some dogs like to, and I mentioned this in one of the articles, like some dogs like to play chase. Some dogs like to wrestle. Some dogs like to just mosey together. And I would say Stark and Frolic a lot of the time. Yeah. They mosey together and they smell and they pee.
Yeah, and they do that together.
And that's their sociability, but they enjoy it together. He's always happy to see her, vice versa, and away they go, and they're happier than stink.
Yeah, and so I think finding what works for your dog is important in, putting them in the correct situations, the situations that are going to work for them. So I know, for example, that Stark can go off leash with Frolic, and that's not going to be a problem. Yeah. When I bring a new dog over, I always start on leash because I know he does better with the on-leash meetings, because he doesn't feel like they're going to jump on him, like you said with Frolic.
So the thing actually Amelia's saying is she's not assuming her dog will like every dog. So this is another thing what we're trying to say as far as the sociability is personalities, and even us as people. Do we get along with every single person we meet?
Exactly.
No. So why is the expectation put on our dogs? They're such different personalities, and again, talking about wrestling and playing. Like, there's some dogs that like to do that, and then Maui wants nothing to do with that. He'd rather run with a dog. Yeah. And then Amelia's saying that with Stark is she's aware of what he likes or doesn't like, and she's always, again, setting him up for success and just holding him back and saying, okay, let's see how he does. Is he enjoying this or isn't he? And I think, honestly, that should be done at any age instead of just assuming this is what I should be doing with my dog to socialize with other dogs.
Yeah, because people just think of the big group, and that's like the be all end all, but it doesn't have to be that way.
No, I think there's way more to it, and I think it's what they brought up with. So then there's the other scenario. I'm not going to encourage you adopt an adult dog, a rescue. Like, don't one of the first places you go to, not the dog park, where there's 5, 6, 7 other dogs, strange dogs, like, slowly figure out what their play style is, what they like to do, how they sort of emerge with the other dogs, and then go from there and accept it and move on.
So I think overall what we're trying to say is there's a spectrum of how social your dog may or may not be, and most dogs fall somewhere in the middle, and that's perfectly normal. It's not like at no point we as dog professionals expect every dog to come in and want to see and play with every dog.
No.
Same with when we go out walking, right? Like if I go out on a new trail, I'm taking Nuggie and maybe not necessarily Stark the first time I go there. If we run into a dog, I know that's not a problem for her. So if you know that, your dogs are going walking with some friends or something like that, you can start to set them up for success in their own way. As opposed to just thinking of, well, if my dog can't go to a dog park, then he's aggressive. So it's normal that most dogs maybe wouldn't enjoy that style of play. We will talk about different play styles in another episode. But this is something that comes up a lot because I think people feel negatively about if their dog is not perfectly social with every dog. And there's just so much that goes into it.
And I think the main thing, again, that when Amelia and I discussed this, is they change from puppies. Don't get stuck what your puppy did. And I joke a little bit with people, but be with your dog in the present. What does your dog like now? How do they want to socialize? Because yes, okay, they love to play and wrestle with how many dogs, right? But that was puppyhood.
Yes.
Move
and
on.
then we change.
Move on.
And then we change, and then
we
grow.
change, and that's the way it is. Dogs don't stay the same age. Just like we don't. We adapt and change with things, and really that's what we want to get, because we've heard it time and time again. Oh well, when we came 2 years ago to puppy school or beginning with basics, they loved to play.
And now it changed.
And now it changed.
And so I mean, all that to say, it's not a bad thing. We can move either way with different experiences, and there's just the whole spectrum. So every dog is going to be an individual. Every dog is going to be a little bit different. And we just wanted to make sure that everybody sort of feels good about where their dog is at.
And be in the moment. In that time period with your dog, supporting them.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you for tuning in. You can find us online at www.thedogclassroom.com and on social media at The Dog Classroom on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Spotify and YouTube. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
Thank you.